Hi, my name is Phoebe Liebling. I've been a registered nutritional therapist for over a decade, and today I'm here in collaboration with Suv to talk about natural approaches to PMS. Because premenstrual syndrome is incredibly common, but it doesn't mean it's normal or a given. So let's dive in. Premenstrual syndrome, PMS, affects up to 75 to 85% of women, and many will simply assume they just have to cope with symptoms like mood swings, cramps, fatigue, bloating, and breast tenderness, believing it's just part of having a menstrual cycle. But that is not true. Now, I'm about to download a lot of information, and I know it can be hard to take everything in from just listening. So if you head to my website, lieblinghealth.com, you will find supportive blog posts, infographics, and more there. Now, I've chosen to partner with Suv on this pretty hefty project, let's call it, because the range is rooted in a real understanding of how our hormones shift across our cycle and going into things like perimenopause. And each product is thoughtfully put together with ingredients that actually make sense, like magnesium for cramps, adaptogens for stress, and botanicals to support mood and energy. And along the way, I'm going to show you how to stack and layer them to resolve whatever symptoms you may be navigating. Right, let's get back to it. So persistent PMS is actually a sign your hormones, nervous system, and inflammatory pathways are out of balance. And we have huge amounts of opportunity to improve all of those, which then means we can wave PMS firmly goodbye. I separate the clusters of common symptoms into what I call the 5 pillars of PMS, as those issues are underlain by the same processes. So women naturally find they'll experience 1 to 2 pillars, and therefore their interventions would be streamlined, rather than me jumping about saying, you need to do this for this one, and then this for that one. That's not how I work. Yes, I want to relieve symptoms in the short term for comfort, of course, but really I'm going upstream, and I'm looking at the root of why those superficial alarm signals are there and resolving that, so I knock out all of those resulting symptoms in one go. Exciting stuff, eh? Now, before I dive into that wizardry, I just want to flag a couple of key points that are crucial to understand. The first is that hormonal birth control, whether it's a pill, patch, ring, or implant, will always have long-term negative impacts on hormone balance. In the short term, they may mask PMS symptoms, but will ultimately worsen underlying imbalances over time. This is both by adjusting natural hormone levels, but also critically by depleting the nutrients essential for hormone and mood stability. I will never say that someone must come off a hormonal birth control that they're using immediately if they do not want to, but if you are on hormonal contraception, you should be actively supplementing the following nutrients to avoid your levels becoming insufficient. Magnesium for muscle function, mood regulation, and digestive health. B vitamins to make your neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, as well as for energy production and sleep. Zinc for your immune system, estrogen to progesterone ratios, inflammation control and taste perception, and vitamins C and E, which provide critical antioxidant defense as well as influencing things like your collagen status and skin health. And finally, selenium for your thyroid and estrogen metabolism. And hormonal birth control should also not be used to control hormonal symptoms. End scene. Then the second key thing to note is that it's not just your reproductive hormones that change across your cycle. Other hormones, including insulin, which regulates your blood sugar and how your body decides whether to use or store energy, and so also dictates things like the amount of body fat you hold, are tied to this monthly shift as well. And this is why women will find their energy, eating habits, sleep, and digestion can all be hugely different at the beginning versus the end of the month. Some gentle shifting is totally normal, and if we are in tune with that, then naturally adapting our exercise, the types of food we eat, how much rest we take, as well as things like alcohol and caffeine consumption, will support that. The problem often comes with the fact that we don't do this, and then PMS will spike as a result. Now, just as a quick recap, in case you aren't 100% on some of the terminology around the menstrual cycle, it's split into 4 phases, but some will simplify that down to 2. The 4 are menstrual, follicular, ovulatory, and luteal. But if we're simplifying, then we just say follicular and luteal. So follicular is our period to ovulation, and then luteal is from mid-cycle to the day before we start our next period. We start counting a new cycle from the first day of our menstrual bleed. That is day 1, not the end of our period, which some people get confused about. So let's start at the beginning. The menstrual phase, which can also be counted as the first part of the follicular phase, and it would be days 1 to 5 on average. Hormone-wise, estrogen and progesterone are at their lowest, and FSH, follicle-stimulating hormone, begins to rise. The key characteristics are that you're shedding the uterine lining as your period, energy can be quite low, and you are leaning towards rest and gentle movement, and that generally feels quite good. And as I said, this marks the beginning of a new cycle. Diet-wise, we want to be thinking of lots of nourishing, warming foods. A creamy egg white porridge of jumbo oats, chia seeds and cinnamon cooked in a milk of your choosing, with egg whites or whole eggs whisked through at the end and served with cooked apple and walnuts is a lovely breakfast. Then maybe an iron-rich beef stew with beans or lentils and root vegetables is a great cosy lunch, or on a warm day, that could be served more like a taco or grain bowl. You might have some edamame or crackers with hummus to snack on in the afternoon, and a slow-cooked chicken thigh dish with sweet potato, carrots and pesto for dinner. Or crispy tofu, red lentil pasta, cherry tomatoes and pesto would be a plant-based option. Movement should still be something we are doing, but the focus is more on restorative activities like yoga, swimming, Pilates and walking, things that calm the body when you're moving as opposed to pushing it to perform. We then continue with the rest of the follicular phase until the middle of your cycle, which could be around days 12 to 16, depending on how long your cycle naturally is. The idea that a menstrual cycle is or should be 28 days isn't really a thing. As long as your pattern is consistent, that is all that matters. Hormone-wise, FSH stimulates follicle development in the ovaries, estrogen rises steadily as those follicles mature, and LH, luteinizing hormone, begins to increase towards the end of the follicular phase. Key characteristics now are that the uterine lining is rebuilding, and so mood, energy, and cognitive function improve as estrogen starts to rise. This is your social butterfly season, so it's a great time for creativity, strength training, and progressing in all areas of our lives. During the follicular phase, estrogen also improves insulin sensitivity, meaning your body handles carbs more efficiently, which leans towards the potential for slightly more intense activity. Heavier strength training, some interval-style workouts, generally a higher tolerance for cardio, and a more protein, vegetable, and slow-burning carb-style diet. I think of an example day along the lines of something like toast with tinned sardines and tomatoes, or cottage cheese, avocado, and greens for breakfast, chicken or tempeh with some greens, roasted carrots, wild rice, and a tahini dressing for lunch, an afternoon snack of yogurt with a tart fruit like kiwi or berries and some seeds, and then grilled salmon or tofu with broccoli, potatoes, and a lovely lemony vinaigrette for dinner. Dandelion and peppermint teas are great for sort of herbal support for the hormones during this phase as well. Mid-cycle, we then hit the ovulatory phase. Your LH surges triggering ovulation, which is the release of an egg. Estrogen peaks and testosterone also briefly rises. And this is your prime fertility window, so confidence, libido, and communication skills often peak too. Some people will notice that their cervical mucus is clear and stretchy at this point, and that's to support fertilization if you are trying to conceive. Exercise-wise, we are feeling powerful. High-performance workouts, group classes, competitive training, and heavy lifts will all feel great. We want to support that with lovely, colourful, antioxidant-rich meals like a savoury grain bowl for breakfast. I love to do sort of like herby rice with edamame, eggs, prawns, seeds, and then would have something like a jacket potato with chicken, yogurt, grilled courgette, olives, and rocket for lunch. Might have a little protein smoothie or yogurt mixed with protein powder and some crackers for a snack. And then something like a Thai mince or tofu lettuce wrap with rainbow slaw, rice noodles, and a peanut ginger sauce for dinner. We're feeling like a rainbow unicorn, and our habits and meals are reflecting that too. Then the dial shifts totally as we move into the luteal phase. Progesterone rises, estrogen dips slightly and then rises again, and then both decline sharply if pregnancy does not occur, which would trigger our next period. Because your body is preparing for potential pregnancy during this sort of 14-day-ish time period, you might feel calmer or more inward in the early luteal, which can turn into being irritable and fatigued in the late luteal if you haven't quite shifted your habits in line with that hormone shift. The other key thing is that progesterone reduces your insulin sensitivity, making you more prone to blood sugar swings, cravings, and inflammation. So nutrition-wise, we need to get smart. We now up our complex carbs for serotonin and stable energy, so your whole grains and root vegetables. Really ensure we're getting enough of vitamin B6, magnesium and calcium-rich foods like organic dairy, tahini, herbs, avocado, nuts, seeds, leafy greens. And we want to reduce salt, caffeine, and sugar, as well as alcohol, to avoid bloating, water retention, and mood swings. Because there is nothing worse than feeling a little bit slower, less on it, and generally introverted, than then adding a sense of sluggish, bloaty puffiness to that too. High progesterone, when not met with kindness, can also trigger more emotional eating habits. We'll start to seek reward from food when we feel vulnerable, so this is why we really want to shift to support the more homebody needs of this phase, so it becomes naturally rejuvenating as opposed to us feeling off and a bit overwhelmed. Exercise-wise will depend on your baseline fitness, but generally this is a consolidation period rather than a progression one. For those who weight train regularly, you might feel totally normal to continue as you normally would right up until just before your period, when our strength drops by about 25 to 30%, but that would just mean doing your usual workouts but with lower weights. Generally, moderate resistance training is fine for everyone, but with no long stints of cardio and a focus on recovery, mobility, yoga and Pilates in the late luteal to avoid feeling fatigued or triggering lots of inflammation just as your period starts. So that is the ideal. And a lot of you are probably thinking, that is a lot of admin to keep changing around. But really what we're looking to do is honour the natural shift from follicular social butterfly to luteal homebody. And when you don't, for example, if you're trying to power through the luteal phase, like you're still in the follicular, so you're working late or socialising a lot, sticking to high intensity workouts, eating the same lower carb meals, drinking too much coffee, that's when it can backfire spectacularly. And this is what drives a lot of PMS issues. So with no further delay, let's run through my 5 pillars and how to specifically support those. But as a general point, start having a think about whether all those bits I've just said feel like what you're doing, or if not, how you could maybe start to gently tweak your habits so that your underlying rhythm is more in keeping with that natural tide. Right, pillar 1, mood swings and irritability. As we've just covered, in your luteal phase, your hormones begin to shift dramatically. After ovulation, progesterone rises, preparing your body for a possible pregnancy. But if pregnancy doesn't happen, both progesterone and estrogen drop sharply, and these changes don't just affect your body, they also directly impact your brain. When estrogen falls, your levels of serotonin, the feel-good brain chemical, also drop. And this can lead to the sadness, irritability, or sort of emotional foggy feeling many experience just before their period. At the same time, the calming neurotransmitter GABA takes a hit when progesterone declines, which can make you feel anxious or tense. Add in a slow drop in testosterone and you might also notice low energy, poor focus, or reduced motivation. Certain everyday habits can really intensify this hormonal roller coaster as well. So things like eating lots of sugar or having lots of caffeine will cause spikes and crashes in your blood sugar, which messes with your energy and mood. Alcohol also disrupts hormone balance and your sleep cycle, both of which are key for emotional stability. If you're low in magnesium or B vitamins, your nervous system can struggle to stay balanced, and not getting enough sleep or not moving enough will make everything feel heavier, both emotionally and physically. And as I said at the start, if you're on hormonal birth control, this will further deplete nutrients like B6, zinc and magnesium, all crucial for mood regulating brain chemicals. Now, my superstars from the Soothe range to support anyone experiencing these issues are Over, which supports hormone balance and replenishes nutrients depleted by the pill, and Flow, which is a beautiful blend containing herbal adaptogens to ease mood swings and support resilience. To break them down a little bit more for you, Over contains myo-inositol, which helps with serotonin signaling and improves insulin sensitivity, keeping your mood and blood sugar balanced. There's zinc for healthy testosterone levels, cinnamon and chromium to regulate blood sugar, and folate, vitamin B9, vitamin D3 and vitamin A, which work together to support brain function, mood and reduce fatigue. Flow, which wanted to get involved right at the beginning, is then a daily multi-nutrient tailored for emotional support throughout your cycle. Vitamin B6 helps your brain make serotonin and dopamine, boosting mood and reducing irritability, combined with magnesium to support those all-important GABA levels and ease PMS-related tension and anxiety. Saffron extract and lemon balm have been shown in studies to ease mild depression and anxiety, and those work alongside L-tyrosine and phenylalanine, which are amino acids that enhance focus and motivation by fueling dopamine production. You've also got herbs like dongquai and maca to support hormonal balance, while zinc and selenium help your body handle stress and maintain stable hormone levels. And you've also got bonus nutrients like B5, B12 and D3 to offer added support for mood, cognition, skin and immunity. So you would use either Flow or Over daily as your foundation, Then we come to your potential soothe stack combos, where you can layer on vibes, crave, or buzz, depending on the mental or emotional support you need. If your mood dips, your anxiety spikes, or you feel overwhelmed around your period, then you are a flow and vibes girl. You take flow daily, then add vibes, ovulation, and continue through to your period, doing that for at least 3 cycles. You could also add vibes as needed when emotional resilience feels low during periods of more intense stress, for example. If you're more of a low mood with intense cravings, emotional eating, or mood dips between meals kind of girl, then your stack is over with crave, as that's going to more strongly support blood sugar regulation, and crave then boosts dopamine, helping to manage compulsive eating or low reward brain patterns. You'd add crave in the late follicular phase, around or just before ovulation, and continue through the luteal phase. It's especially useful in the afternoons or pre-dinner when cravings and irritability tend to peak. Crave also pairs beautifully with flow if your mood issues are paired with sort of hormone-driven sadness or fatigue. And finally, if you're more of a mental fatigue, lack of focus, brain fog, low motivation, wired but tired, or burnout situation, then you stack flow or over with buzz in the morning or early afternoon, as that contains L-tyrosine and rhodiola to boost dopamine and motivation. It's for use when you need to feel switched on, but without caffeine overload or crashes. As caffeine often drives PMS issues, I would often suggest switching it out for buzz for a couple of months and seeing how that impacts your symptoms overall. You can also use buzz sporadically during the luteal phase, which I often do, but avoid it in the evening as it would be far too stimulating. Now, pillar 2, period pains and cramps, aka dysmenorrhea. So in the days leading up to your period, your body ramps up production of natural chemical messengers called prostaglandins, and these are what trigger contractions of the uterus to shed its lining. But when prostaglandin levels get too high, those helpful contractions become painful cramps. The pain will be made even worse if you're low in magnesium, which normally helps your muscles to relax, because without enough magnesium, the uterus will cramp more intensely, and then elements like blood sugar fluctuations, excessive exercise, or just not having enough recovery time, alcohol and caffeine will add fuel to that fire. If you're on hormonal birth control, you will be even more prone to cramping over time, since those will deplete your magnesium and zinc levels further. Certain foods and habits will also make period pain more intense. All processed sugar, caffeine, and alcohol increase our resting level of inflammation and increase prostaglandin production. Skipping meals or grazing continuously will also worsen cramps as you trigger your stress response. And that means more pain, more magnesium being used up, and you'll also feel that pain more intensely. The vicious cycle can then make us more inactive, which means our circulation and lymph flow slows down, so things stagnate and your body releases fewer feel-good endorphins, which are natural pain relievers. Are you starting to see the web-like nature of these things and how they're all connected yet? So I have 3 main soothe stacks for this pillar. Firstly, you choose your base, and I would go for endo or flow, or if you're perimenopausal, then we go for 40+. So endo is best for painful periods with more estrogen-dominant symptoms like breast tenderness, bloating, and heavy bleeding. Its key ingredients are indole 3-carbinol, I3C, to support estrogen metabolism, with magnesium and B6, which calm the uterus and nervous system. It's also got evening primrose oil, which reduces inflammation and fluid retention. You take this daily throughout your cycle for best results, and we always work on hormonal symptoms in 3 monthly cycles, because any changes we make today can't really impact the cycle we are in already. They'll start to influence the next one though, and by the 3rd, we should be seeing a shift from the interventions we've made. So this is always my marker for when you can start to expect significant symptom change. You'll see improvements before, but hormones need time to be retuned. Flow is more for sort of mood instability and cramps are both dominant for you. You choose flow instead of endo if mood swings, anxiety, or low resilience are as strong as your cramps. And option 3 is 40+, which is for those in perimenopause or older menstruators. You choose this if you're over 40 and experiencing fatigue, hormonal shifts, or cycle irregularities, or if you feel you need energy, stress support, and if your period pain is part of a wider perimenopause picture, with other things like joint aches or poor exercise recovery, for example. So there are bases, and then we add ouch for fast-acting relief. You add it to your base 2 to 3 days before your period starts and continue throughout your period. You can then use it at any other time you feel a pain flare, for example, if you have lower back pain, pelvic cramps, or muscle aches. It works by combining fast-acting anti-inflammatories like turmeric and ginger with muscle relaxants and circulation boosters to calm cramping and reduce tightness. It's also non-drowsy and natural, designed to take the edge off so we don't need pain-relieving medication and actually start to address the underlying cause of the pain as opposed to masking over it. We are flying now onto pillar 3, breast tenderness. Ugh. Heavy, swollen, or achy breasts before your period are usually a result of a relative lack of progesterone to estrogen, meaning that your body is going to hold onto more fluid. Because estrogen makes us retain sodium and progesterone is a natural diuretic, which means it helps us to flush fluid out through the kidneys. If they're out of balance, we can retain water, and that makes breast tissue sensitive, sore, and swollen. And this imbalance is going to become more noticeable if you're dealing with high stress, not sleeping well, or if you're consuming a lot of caffeine, salt, or alcohol, all of which worsen that fluid retention and hormonal disruption. If you're on birth control, you're more prone to it since that can interfere with estrogen detox and deplete key nutrients like magnesium and B6, both of which are completely integral for hormone balance, but also for reducing discomfort. Now, if breast tenderness is an issue for you, you do want to have a look at the everyday habits I mentioned at the beginning, as these will really impact this symptom. Breast tenderness is very rarely an isolated issue, and my stacks here are pretty common. So the bases are flow, which is best for hormonal mood issues with mild breast tenderness, or endo, best for breast tenderness linked to estrogen dominance, indicated by breast pain that's severe, achy, and pretty persistent, often accompanied by heavy periods, bloating, or water retention. Or for perimenopause or cyclical tenderness in your 40s or older, you might choose meno. You might get breast pain alongside hot flashes, anxiety, or sleep disruption. And you then add OW or vibes for targeted support. OW is best with endo or meno, but you can also pair it with flow. And you take it daily for 5 to 7 days before your period or whenever your breast pain flares. I also suggest combining that with gentle lymphatic massage or light movement to enhance relief, as this will help to get that additional fluid moving. Vibes is then about calming emotional reactivity tied to hormonal shifts. So I'd use it when breast tenderness is paired with mood swings, anxiety, weepiness, overstimulation. Basically, key emotional PMS symptoms that heighten physical sensitivity. You'd start it at ovulation and continue until your period starts. And you can use it alongside OW if you feel both presentations apply to you. You would then naturally find that you probably need one of them less after a couple of cycles as your overall hormone pattern shifts. Right, pillar 4, fatigue and low energy. In the second half of your cycle, the luteal phase, our progesterone levels are rising, and this hormone is calming, even slightly sedating. It's falling progesterone during perimenopause that actually leads to early waking, as our sleep cycle isn't as well supported. We often just think about estrogen and progesterone as being related to reproduction, but they have systemic effects. But anyway, back to what we're talking about today. During the luteal phase, you will find yourself wanting to naturally slow down. You'll need more rest, can feel a little foggy. It's your body's way of encouraging restoration, but for many who ignore that gentle signal to be calmer, that translates into sluggishness, brain fog, or even burnout. And then, just before your period starts, progesterone and estrogen drop sharply. And that sudden fall doesn't just affect your uterus, it impacts your brain hugely too. Our feel-good neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine take a dip, affecting motivation, mood, and overall vitality. Then if you also have heavy periods, that natural blood loss during your period can massively deplete your iron levels. You'll feel weak, short of breath, or just off. Layer on inflammation, and no wonder you can feel completely drained. But it's not just hormones at play. Your lifestyle tips the scale ultimately. Poor sleep, too much caffeine, skipped meals, chronic stress, all mess with your energy. They also deplete things like B12, magnesium, iron, and vitamin D, leaving you with roller coaster energy and unstable moods. So you want to ensure you're upping your iron and B12 rich foods, especially if your periods are heavy, keeping your blood sugar stable by pairing slow burning carbs with protein, and avoid or really limit caffeine and alcohol, and turn that switch onto the form of activity you're choosing. My C foundations here would be over for younger menstruators, those with PCOS, PMS related fatigue, and if you struggle with low motivation from the midpoint of your cycle onwards. Or for perimenopause fatigue, hormone dips and adrenal burnout, I'll go with 40 plus, as this is going to support energy metabolism, mood, and adrenal resilience. When we come to stack for this pillar, it depends on what the rest of your PMS picture looks like, as fatigue is quite a common issue that links to lots of others. So, If over is your base, you could add buzz for brain fog or low motivation in the follicular or ovulatory phase. You could add crave for emotional eating, energy crashes, or sugar cravings in the luteal phase. You could add vibes for PMS-style mood swings, irritability, or anxiety starting around days 18 to 28. Or you might add ouch for cramping, bloating, or inflammation on days 1 to 3 of your period. I like the fact these are all sachets, so you can kind of pick and choose between them. If 40 plus is your base, you might add buzz for mental sharpness or motivation on tired or foggy mornings. Or you might add crave for pre-period fatigue and sugar cravings, especially in the late afternoon. Or you might think of adding vibes for mood instability, low tolerance to stress, or irritability in the mid-luteal phase and onwards. Or you could add ouch for joint pain, cramps, or period-related inflammation anytime symptoms flare. So you've got lots of little bits and pieces that you could start to put together. And do remember that on my website, you have all of these as infographics so you can see how to create your own stacks. Oh my goodness, we've made it. The last one, pillar 5, bloating and water retention. Feeling puffy, swollen, or like nothing fits in the days leading up to your period are just some of the joys we associate with hormonal bloating. But this isn't just about food or water though. It's deeply rooted in those hormonal tides I explained when running through the phases of the menstrual cycle. High levels of progesterone in the luteal phase slows down our digestive system because progesterone has a direct impact on the smooth muscle of your intestines. It's not uncommon to feel fuller, gassier, or even mildly constipated at this point too. At the same time, estrogen increases how much sodium we retain in our body, which I talked about with the breast tenderness, which then also encourages us to hold on to more water. You might notice that in your abdomen, your face, or even your fingers. And just before your period starts, progesterone dips down, and with its natural diuretic effect gone, the puffiness can then peak. As I said before, a diuretic is something that encourages us to flush fluid out through the kidneys, which is why water retention is usually associated with higher relative amounts of estrogen to progesterone. Estrogen makes us hold on to water, but progesterone in the right amount will equal that out so we don't get symptoms. But progesterone is pretty sensitive. Even things like a little too much intense exercise or poor sleep will cause dips in progesterone. Then the ratio swings and we flick into water retention as opposed to good fluid balance. Using things like electrolytes can be quite helpful for this as well. And to complete the picture, your body's also making prostaglandins, those inflammatory compounds that help to trigger menstruation, but they will also affect gut motility and fluid retention as well. Remember what I was saying in pillar 1 about period pains? Sound familiar here? Yet period pains, bloating and water retention are all underlain by the same trifecta of things. Simple things like avoiding excessively salty or sugary foods, as well as caffeine and alcohol, will really help, as does making sure you are moving regularly but not in a crazy intense way. Just gentle and steady activity, and prioritising really good quality rest. Now the Soothe superhero here is Deflate. It's a bloat-easing, digestion-loving formula packed with diuretics, calmatives, and enzymes to support digestion, flush out excess fluid, and soothe your stress response all in one. I'd encourage you to add this in from mid-cycle onwards, pairing with one of the other bases I've mentioned before. So maybe over, flow, endo, or meno usually. Over with Deflate would be for blood sugar and insulin regulation alongside bloating, puffiness, or sluggish pre-period digestion. Flow with Deflate would be for mood swings, overall hormone support, and then mild to moderate bloating or fluid retention. I'd usually see someone taking Flow daily with Deflate during the luteal phase and then maybe stacking Vibes or Ouch on top based on their symptoms. Endo with Deflate is for those estrogen dominant style issues, heavy periods, mood swings, and then fluid retention. They work beautifully together as Deflate is an excellent match for endo's hormone clearing action. If someone also experiences period pain, then I'd stack Ouch or Vibes if they're emotionally reactive. And then Meno with Deflate is for perimenopause bloating, cycle irregularity, fatigue, general hormonal puffiness, and sluggish digestion. That would be Meno daily and then Deflate in the luteal phase. Goodness me. That was a lot. I hope you found this helpful. Do leave any questions in the comments if you have them, and you can find more information on my clinical services as well as all those supportive written posts on everything I've spoken about on my website. See you next time.